So I put a clip of a YouTube video with a guy with real passions and emotions mixed with fake passions and emotions and fake news leading him. That's how I could discern it. Weathersfield Police, but also with them, other police departments and police forms had collusion with the World Trade Center attack, intercities too, with campuses, intra-campuses, intercultural and intracultural, identity theft, fraud, slanders, rules, hyper additionally as collusions with the breaching method, which is one of the reasons why and how everyone left the breaching method replaced from the communications of our founders that they left declassified for James Madison and for the rest of the founders, that we only know that it was James Madison and the portion of Native Americans that agreed to help him in that for that plan, because their value as that plan. But that plan has still not been, we have not gotten the Constitution unabridged. One of the reasons that we had World Trade Center attack rolls self-valued is because of the World Trade Center and all the court next to it, spots A through Z, they have collusion/S with organized crimes and with predicate acts with facts methods like wire crime acts and methods, self-value. The intelligence agency values, while tactically delusions are at the same time, too, no. What they're valuing fake things in databases, fake transcripts on a mass scale, all kinds of organized crimes involved with campuses, interstates. There's a Fred Grisey, who's one of the people involved with child abusers, leaders of kids, years apart. They sought me out to record, confess, demonstrate, confirm. Also, the F.B.I. has rules with him, with sexual and medical offenders of kids, and people involved with Hartford Hospital, involved with foreign and domestic military, involved with the World Trade Center attack, and more people involved with the proven child abusers, leaders of kids, years apart, and roles with forcing it both times. Other natures of organized crimes are involved at the same time. All kinds of medical corruption and fake transcripts in medical databases, with ones personally and professionally involved with judges and prosecutors and victims advocates with overt criminal enterprises and terrorists. And my Saudi friend, my neighbors have cousins that knew her before I did. I didn't know that. I found out and people with the Weathersfield Police who faked conversations with me at the police station that weren't at all as a kid, and I was an adult. And the kids who did go down there and speak with them, they attached them to fake conversations. In other words, and fake ties to others, fake natures of ties to others too. And the difference of that is exploited. This is where and how courts have been asking questions consciously, pretending that they're honest, to cover up collusions and things associated with their kids, themselves, their colleagues, the value of their whole place. American history, you can't tell it properly if you don't teach about the difference between overt criminal enterprises, private ones, terrorists, and like the three branches of government. How they were collusions with way worse. That which had sickly distinctly, but also sickly non-distinctly, even slavery against our own black pupils and whites of eyes, rackets, hyper additional. Anyone would try to counter verbally that or all the other crazy things against everyone and every difference, they would be sensed through our own. Forced to be self-valued because the breaching method was the first one to start asking questions. I learned at Central Connecticut State University in notes that they had internationally monitored conversations entrenched since before America's founders were born. It was against the law to even be found out. It would even be found that you heard someone speaking about building infrastructure outside of my internationally monitored conversations, and you didn't tell them. They would frame you people for that too, etc., for other motivations. Everyone had been roles since before religious messengers were born, with uses of the syntax of the names of the people of the sciences as collusion/S with a hypercriminal foreign influence, a hypercriminal enterprise, method singular, that began and stays by keeping other things, others, ourselves blamed for what it caused and keeps, like collusion/S against all identities of logic, all kinds of identities of logic, and proofs that the hyper singular one that we all share, and all its parts are prevented free speech by people that are only allowed to be heard if self-valued roles slash s, sensing for the breaching method too. If anyone, for example, brings up how, for example, it's inseparable from any proper scientific treatment of American history to understand clearer than day how and why our founders had to declassify for us to remember that, and how and why our founders did not have free speech. And then, even as a president, the only founder we know was our founder. James Madison still didn't have free speech. You guys will not even allow people to be honest about the extortion of James Madison. At the same time, you were tactically delusions wrought. You are incapable of speaking for emotions and passions honestly. And you are, in other words, and you're needing to dishonestly pretend that we're insulting you. I asked many times to get me off the fake conversations with WFSB. They recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed, have roles with a whole bunch of different countries, people from Korea, people from Saudi Arabia, military, foreign and domestic, involved next to the state capitol, also with Fox Connecticut News, which is right there, and spots next to them, involved with former director of the F.B.I, Robert Luskin, and various natures of federal criminals and their family members before that was proven. They were also involved in, and still are involved, stacking predicate acts, fake tax, fake natures of ties to me, identity theft, identity frauds, slanders roles. These are both parties that are being have been used remotely, criminally, foreign influence, tactically, delusions wrought. They have hid this from presidents relative to their roles with the intelligence, putting fake things in databases. Not one identity, the names of the people, the scientists, the names of the people, the sports, even the military, right through wars. So that's why they're separating the subject of 9/11 from the wars. And like from what so they're separating the subject of nuclear weapons or peaceful energy generation. And all that is inseparable also from how the suburbs were designed before America's founders were born, with slavery entrenched northern colonies, southern colonies. And the counters to American history and people defending American history are collusions, framing our founders, for which we only know that the only founder we know of is James Madison. But he still didn't have free speech as a president, even once he was the fourth president. And they had to counter extort George Washington and force him to be a president. I mean, he agreed because it was the best plan. Everyone was fact, cheap, nature, tortured, extorted, and enslaved. But then that's what they did. They made them break the law syntactically to an extent. That means, and then they were in deep trouble at key locations. They had no means to defend themselves but to unite with the other people that were extorted at key locations in more than 13 states. But that was the beginning. That they could only, but everyone had to hide their actual motivations. They had to use truths for lies. They weren't. It wasn't about a tea tax when there was still slavery entrenched, and everyone rolls with all kinds of crazy things against every human difference. You can't speak for what nature communicates then. That's why we're supposed to have the religious rights and freedom for us, not for the government, too. The government has criminally foreign influence, tactically delusions wrought readings of statutes and precedents, and collusions with the campuses with readings of the religious books, criminally foreign influence, tactically delusions wrought. Concentrated, only semi-guilt there, but concentrated there with psychiatry, roles intercampuses, totally different campuses. Even ones with like with triages throughout the country. Those families are involved with intelligence families, like with the military. Hartford hospitals recording confessing them. They'd rather confess this than get on paper. And one day they won't communicate with me. They've been hiding what I told you. There were threats and abuses of kids. They hid that. They have judges, prosecutors, and their family members like involved with putting fake things in databases with sexual and medical offenders, whiting forensics, changing digital evidences. These are right through administrations. They keep whole careers, criminally foreign influence, tactically delusions raw. So if you want to use passions and emotions, allow the other person to. Otherwise, get just to stay calm and get them on paper, one name and sequence. Get me off the fake conversations with WFSB about the World Trade Center attack, and the fake conversations and ties with others about that too. They also attached me to fake conversations with people that were also in the World Trade Center attack context to change communications about that and about relative legal cases. WFSB has organized crime acts and criminally foreign influence ones with other countries and people from other states and intercampuses and intercities and intra-cities with a whole bunch of people that have been sticking predicate acts with facts behind my back in databases and having the people involved act tied to it. They'll tell you this, but you have to ask them properly. The other people have been pretending they're recorded. They weren't even in classes with me. Like a Kerr family. I never even saw them around school. They try to make a quick exception with the people that did it involved increasingly with home break-ins in my area and overt criminal enterprises, private ones, confessions and demonstrations of their roles with child abusers, leaders of kids, years apart and more involved then and now, including as names next to religious spots, including all along on all sides of a religious spot along Route 3 being one of the conjunctions to it. Conjunctions to Route 3 and conjunctions to that, like the state judicial branch offices, are increasingly things that connect people that had World Trade Center attack roles with a whole bunch of different countries. Their identity differences rackets. They're manifest that way, for which forgiveness is important to discern. They're only capable of being that way or sensing. These, their whole careers were worthless. We're in how it counts. They have a whole wire crime acts and methods. They're only capable of getting away with that by self-valuing criminally foreign influence principles treatments with each age and nature of fact treatment nature. By even though the difference of that of the location /s, excuse me, use /s uses, but as collusions everywhere the human species body is, per nature system. We have been systems tactically ulterior because the breaching method measures names A through Z. Voicings for humanity A through Z. Incapable of defending that and of reporting discern what's actually recorded with databases and the value of what appears to be recorded legitimately with them. Wethersfield town offices increasingly recorded, confess, demonstrate, confirm. They give like statistics on their phone calls and their interactions. The same with the fire departments. They have rules with other countries and rights and needs to lie and statutes that give them the means to do that various ways. But they left out exceptions in exception nature. And they recorded themselves doing that consciously. For example, there are people involved with the police chiefs of Wethersfield, recorded themselves with readings of statutes that give the benefit of doubt at the last second to people based on their title, et cetera, et cetera. So increasingly, the breaching method showed the titles and things like that. They have to force things before courts so they could get away with readings of statutes that way, pretend they don't realize collusion /s at the crime scenes of all natures, including names next to body dumping spots, increasingly involved with the campuses, with the identity names of the people of the sciences and of the departments at Central Connecticut State University in Britain, Connecticut, and the military, and exceptions with the a bunch of people with Harvard courts in the Britain Superior Court, and people and the different natures of conjunctions to them are exploited, not just ground location, but they're leaking this too while pretending other. The ones in the background too, and they've been collusion /s only, like we're supposed to understand why there's a witch trials place next to Webb House in Old Wethersfield, Connecticut, now renamed the Webb Stevens Museum. Then and still, when it was named Webb House and when it's named the Webb Stevens Museum, they're stacking more sense and sensibilities and narratives by those places and American principles taught exactly ulterior. They don't even have communicated what our founders communicated about those locations and why and how George Washington was counter-extorted and counter-extorting the rest of the colonists, the rest of the presidents, the rest of and the rest of the Native Americans to do an extensive damage control too. That's why they wanted us to understand why and how they had to leave slavery entrenched northern colonies and southern colonies, because it was all a bunch of crazy things they had to leave entrenched and against themselves and others. And they had to pretend to other at the simultaneously. And they were asked questions to make sure they still had roles with collusions against each other, specifically to keep all natures of independence and all natures of unity, self-value being and having been used tactical terror from the way the simultaneous / hyper-simultaneous uses that. It has us this way. How are you? Thank you. I have to start doing boxing videos. I haven't been. I have to get my boxing license. Then I know I'm gonna fight. I could fight. I could train for it. But I'm gonna start training. As I start, one of the best pieces of boxing equipment is boxing towards the YouTube camera. I find, in other words, because then you sit down, and you look at it, and you're like, oh my god, because it doesn't. You can see that you're just going through the motions. Then you start going faster, and you start seeing like, okay, I'm showing, I'm projecting that. Don't do that. You know what I mean? It makes you better at boxing. So, even when these countries are killing each other, the breaching method has fluent through cultures A through Z, therefore through countries A through Z. They're like it's concentrated with psychiatry, tied to the 3 branches of government and to the intelligence. They're involved with concentrated, where we could observe it the easiest some ways. We could observe it the easiest some ways with our overt criminal enterprises and private ones. And their syntax, they're even on YouTube for themselves. Even if that's made up, they have collusion /S with the predicate acts with facts methods that I recorded as means. I'm not even a lawyer, I'm not a police forum, as means to demonstrate. Even former director of the F.B.I, Robert Luskin, former standing chairperson on the Racketeering, Influenced, and Corrupt Organizations Act, and with other agencies, the differences between the criminally foreign influence uses of the difference of the federal rights and corruption or the states. That difference is used too. Listen when they speak, when you keep hearing those same things they call politics. Since founding, /S, not one modern country had a founding without the breaching method entrenched. We're supposed to understand clearer than day there was a breaching method entrenched. All these subject treatments where had sickly, distinctly people hurt, that's to measure and maintain. No one's addressing how sickly, non-distinctly. The breaching method had multi-front. This against Native American. In other words, and this against, you know what I mean? And all the bad things that would cause. The breaching method knew that nature would also, with demonstrations of that, it would contain demonstrations of itself too. A breaching method non-distinctly hurting northern colonies, northern states, southern states. East, west, the difference. It's still manifest with rap, with his aggression, but it's still used for identity theft, fraud, slanders, roles. Collusion /S with the shell game with black and white voices, international and here. Boxings, originally and still. Our founders wanted us to understand clearer than day. You can't counter this thing by looking through the white. This is black and white collusion, exceptions collusion. It forced roles with it, sustained, because of the way it knew how nature would demonstrate that it forced, tricked, hurt, and persuaded the people operating the names of the countries it forced, tricked, hurt, and persuaded them to counter what it did and causes and maintains on other things, on other names, wrongly, exactly the way it wanted and needs. This is fluent through our countries. That's how they have suits and ties, counters, exceptions. And not one of them addressed how the suburbs are manifest from America to Russia to Ukraine. For example, that pathology, that the designed to cause negative valuation progressions, acts, natures, needing food from other locations, needing plastic bottles of water. Everything's polluted. Even if you had seeds, everything's tactically denatured. This isn't the ground, its identity relationship to itself and the value of the progression of that, which revealed these seeds originally. Everything is captive as ulterior systems from nature's when it's only not, when it's not only nature as criminal insidiousness. Nature itself shows us this. Nature shows. Come with pantheism. I'll donate pantheism. So we have to do it, in other words. We can't trust the intelligence or the names of the people of the sciences at countries A through Z. In other words, real science does not need a campus. The campus needs to preserve real science. They have it all, they have what appears to be debatable, used to get over on what's not debatable, like black people's rights of eyes. Just having black people's rights of eyes. And it left out all this time from the voices with black and or white or whatever the difference. They left it out. You messed up. Not y'all, but I'm just saying, everyone, formally, we have to understand we cannot accept our formal, those guises of integrity of sciences that never had integrity because each location /s. If you ignore what they force us to ignore, and we say, okay, but that's we understand why and how they're trained to speak American history that way. The only reason we don't know how to, we wait to respond to it, because what it is criminal foreign influence. Roles with criminal foreign influence, fact-driven nature, quality aspects in nature, uses of names, and because of uses of difference /s. And then the breaching method shows everyone that they have to show everyone else too. That means to blame other things on others and or on selves, including those means preemptively to do that. Right through administrations, whole careers are kept criminally foreign influence, tactically delusions raw, relative to a singular method that's recorded. But you guys need to follow mandated law. Stop changing and faking what people say. Get me off the fake conversations with WFSB. The intelligence community is recording, confessing, demonstrating, confirming they influence people on a mass scale. The way the breaching method shows them to jump into people's conversations dishonestly. And increasingly they're valuing, they know that it's at least plausible, but they're also delusions raw. But we could show this if people would follow mandated law regarding the value of what's typed into the databases or what people respond to their multiple choice questions. And so they already had all sides of criminal and civil cases, the lawyers, their family members, their sources, their neighbors, the same thing with the courts, the same thing with the political branches and the executive branch. Already have rules, all kinds of organized crime acts and methods like wire crime acts and methods, fake transcripts into databases, collusions with falsified police reports, arrays of falsified police reports rolls with the same arrest, also to make confessions, also where they have behavior racketeering worse than war crimes, where they spoke on behavior or think about behavior. That's also recorded, and that's also used by the breaching method to show them they need to hide lie progression. They need to hide their actually recorded value of their natures. It is criminal insidiousness nature. The guy in this YouTube short link Get them on paper, one name in sequence. Don't play games because they have more victims of the World Trade Center attack who have roles of the organized crimes then and now. That place is used criminally for influence, tactically delusions raw. And like the corrections officers and the judicial branch officers of Connecticut involved with this too, not just all sides of cases in the court, etc. You guys have sick people in thought because you came through, where you left out the black people's white survivors, first of all, people.